My name is Rannu. I'm a founder of a mobile payments company for Tumo. I'm also an angel investor in about 15 startup companies like Pipedrive, Taxify, and many others. And I'm also co-founder of Garage 48. Those who know, it's a series of events, and one of the last events we've had was in February here in Chisinau. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm trying to understand a little bit of you guys, like your backgrounds. How many of you are startup founders or are working at a startup? Okay, quite a few. How many of you have thought of working at a startup at some point or want to maybe do it in the future or are seriously considering it? Quite a lot more. Why? Just give me a few reasons. Why would you want to, those who are already, why are you startup founders? Freedom, okay. What else? Change the world, okay, cool. What else? Your own boss. What are some other reasons? Money, maybe? Somebody? No? Like what I often hear is also that they have a specific idea that they want to see through and nobody else is doing it. What could be some more reasons? Solve a problem? Sorry? Yeah, direct impact. When you are really working on your own thing, you can have a direct impact. So there are many good reasons why people start startups, and all of them are equally good. What is important, though, at least in my experience, is that whatever your reason or motivation is, make sure that it's strong enough that it will sustain you for at least 5 years. Because this journey is a very long journey and it's a very hard journey. I started it many years ago. Actually, the first reason was fun, because it was like super fun thing to do back then. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit about my company. For Tumo right now, it's a mobile payments company, and we are helping the merchants like Google, Spotify, and many game developers to get money from emerging markets, where very many people have mobile phones, but very few people have credit cards. So we help those merchants to process payments in Google Play and other app stores for people who don't have credit card or any traditional banking mechanism. And we are now live in 95 countries, and we are a team of 75 people in Estonia, China, India, Singapore, San Francisco. We have quite a few merchants signed up, and we've been profitable for the past 7-8 years. But we're also venture funded from Intel and Craycraft. So we are doing really well. But it all started many years ago by accident. I was a university student, and there was one really strange experimental course in the university where they brought together people from different disciplines, and they made us work on actual problems. So we had to come up with a startup idea or a problem, and we had to build a real solution. So our team, we got together randomly, and we picked one. We had a really silly, stupid idea. So we basically thought that advertisements by mobile phone are really cool. It was many years ago. And how we did it was that we made a robot that would call up people on their phone, and it would play them a 1-minute advertisement of a product. And then if you listened until the end, then it would ask you a question about the product, and you would have to answer with your mobile phone. And if you answered correctly, then you could win that product. But not only. If you listened until the end, then in the evening, the system would call you again and play another ad. And if you still listen to the end, the next morning it would play another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And we thought a really good time to do it was between Christmas and New Year, because we thought people would be very, they had nothing else to do than listen to these advertisements. And then we played them, and we got quite a bit of media attention. We learned two things. First thing we learned was that nobody was actually interested in getting this kind of advertisements. It was a completely silly and stupid product. And the other thing we learned was that the team that we had worked really well together. And we definitely wanted to continue working together. So we made a decision that we will pivot. I mean, we didn't use that word because that wasn't available back then, we didn't know it, but we decided that we will do something else, but we'll keep the team. And that was the best decision we made. And the lesson for all this is that your initial idea is most often complete shit. And but by doing it, you might reach to something that makes more sense. So in our case, we pivoted to SMS services. Then afterwards, we realized that we don't want to make all the services ourselves, so we pivoted again to a platform where everybody could make their SMS service. And it was in maybe more than 10 years ago. Then we realized that most of the SMS services that people did were related to payments. So we pivoted again to payment services. And that became basically the idea of Fortuma, which we then felt good enough to take it to other countries and build a global network and take it from there. So the initial idea is always bad. But what has stuck with us, and that what wasn't bad, was that we focused on mobile. So the big question for you is that, for everybody starting something, is that in what area or what field should they focus on? Because there are so many opportunities. In our San Francisco office, there's a sign on the wall that intoxicated by possibility. There are just so many things. So what should you focus on? Like, should you follow your passion? If I would be following my passion, I would probably be a nature photographer or hip-hop producer or something completely different. So there are other criteria. Should you do something that you are really good at? Yes, I mean, that makes also sense. So we have kind of defined that you actually need to find something that is in the intersection of many things. Yes, you should do something that you are passionate about, because otherwise you wouldn't sustain for 5 years or longer in that area. But you also need to do something that you are good at. And we felt that something where you can be potentially one of the top players in the whole world in your area. And for me, I wouldn't be a top 3 nature photographer in the world by any means, but we figured back then that since we are from Northern Europe, we are close to Nokia, Ericsson, all the mobile giants, we can build a mobile company in Northern Europe, where in our field we can be one of the top players in the world, and that's what we did. And also, I think the third criteria is that it needs to make economic sense. So technology, innovation, and those areas are growing. And it's always better to be in a growing field instead of a field that is either stable or even declining. So that's what we have found. The next question is that with whom should you do it? What's the best team? For me, there are 2 things that really work. I mean, the best founding teams have all the core skills that you need to build that particular business. Very often when I talk to young startups, they might be like maybe 3 engineers and they think that they can outsource sales, or they might be a couple of economics students who have this brilliant idea to make a really interesting software, but they don't have the coding skills and they plan to outsource those. So in our experience, you have to have the core skills in the founding team, because it's so hard to build something new from scratch that you cannot outsource important parts of it. And the second key thing is that the people need to like each other. The best thing you can have is a co-founder that is a good co-founder that you like working together with. The next best thing is a single founder, and the worst thing is a bad co-founder, because then you will have all kinds of problems in the lifestyle of the company if you don't have the founding team right. So in our case, after we made this robocall project, we got rid of 2 team members. And everybody else that stayed on board after that are still with us in one or other capacity. So we were really lucky to have a really good founding team. But we also made a decision to focus on getting the right people in the bus very early on, because it's always easier to do it early on than correct it later. Investors. What about investors? These are some of the reactions we got early days when we started seeking for venture capital for Fortumo. It was around 2008-09 when there was this big economic crisis, and we talked to very many investors and we got all kinds of answers like, gosh, I don't see a hockey stick, you're smart guys, why don't you do something else? And my favorite one, we had a meeting with Silicon Valley VC and he missed the meeting, he didn't show up, and then he sent us text, sorry, I missed the meeting, help yourself to drinks and send me a bill. So we had a few wines, and that's actually the first money we got from Silicon Valley venture capitalists, was that bill that we sent them. But we found that it's really hard, and the truth here is that it's hard when you need the money, but it's much easier when you actually don't really need the money, or you feel that you have other alternatives. There's a good metaphor I heard from one of the Estonian founders, Martin Rannu, who's also here tomorrow. He said that startup is like a train that leaves the station. And when the train leaves the station, then investor tries to run alongside the train. And if the train moves too fast for investor to keep running, then he wants to jump in. And if the train slows down, then investor finds another train. So the point when investors want to come is when they see that you are doing so well that they want to be part of that success story. So this sounds really good in theory, but how you actually do it, it's much more complicated. And the best way to actually do it is always the solution of almost every startup problem is a paying customer. So if you can build a business where you can get customers early on, then you will also attract investors, you might become profitable, you might not even need investors, and you have a very good chemistry in a team always as well, because everybody is focused on serving the customer and not dealing with all kinds of other issues that they think are important but actually are not that important at all. We made all kinds of mistakes when we first went out to get a customer. Like for instance, when we first went to neighboring country, Estonia, it's Latvia, then we thought that we could outsource the sales completely to a different company. So we thought that we would build a product and then that company would go and sell it in Latvian market. Very bad idea, it didn't work at all. That company had maybe 20 products to sell and our product was not the easiest one, and obviously we got 0 sales. We made that mistake again a few years later. We went to the US market. We thought that if we hire a really good salesman, then we would be fine. So we put out an ad to a LinkedIn. We had interviewed maybe 50 candidates. All of them were super impressive in their CVs. They said that they had taken single-handedly the sales of a big company from 300 million to 700 million, and all of those guys wanted to work for us. So we were like super impressed. We did a selection, we picked up a guy, and we paid him a really high salary, and we told him to go and find the customers. Well, he didn't. Like, all the time he came back to us and like, oh no, I mean, your product has this thing missing, we can't sell it, you have to fix this before I can sell, blah, blah, blah. So we went there together with him to the meetings, and very quickly we realized that he was selling it from a completely different angle that we thought would make sense to sell it. And we realized that, for instance, we are payments product, so he was selling an Estonian payment solution for US companies to make payments in US. Whereas we realized that it would be much better to sell it for US companies to get payments from everywhere else than US, because we could position ourselves as experts in the rest of the world, but it would be very hard for us to position ourselves as experts in the United States for US-based companies. So those simple things we realized when we went out there ourselves, and then we noticed that the lesson here is that it's really, really hard for startup to outsource sales in the early stage. Because in early stage sales is so much about getting to know the customer needs, that this is something that always founders and founding team members have to do themselves. Big question for every startup is that, especially from a small country like Estonia and also Moldova, is to where to go next, because you have to be international right from the beginning. For Estonians, the solution often is to go to Latvia, which is the next country. Estonia is 1.4 million, Latvia is 2.2 million. Where do people from Moldova go? Romania?
Yeah.
To Russia? Okay. Ukraine? Mm-hmm. These are all much better options because all of them are much bigger markets, bigger countries. Romania is like 25 million, Ukraine, Russia way more. So that makes a lot of more sense. But what we found is that actually the question you need to ask is that, is your neighboring country really the best place in the world for your type of business? Or are there other options? For instance, if you're doing a software product that is very unique in a very special niche, then it might make sense to go already to Silicon Valley or London or even Asia or some other place that could be best for your particular business. Because it's not necessarily easier to go to the neighboring country than to go to some other country that might make more sense. And if you go to your neighboring country, then you lose a lot of time. So we learned that hard way. We first went to Latvia, then Lithuania, then Finland, then a couple of other places. And the first place that really we got any traction from was, surprisingly, Romania. Because it was the biggest than all those others, and we got a really nice early adoption crowd, and we really took it from there. And then we grew to, right now we are in 90 countries and very big in Asia and everywhere else. So you need to think about it. Yeah, I mean, coming back to the previous point, startups are hard. Building new companies is super hard. And oftentimes, when you read about those success stories or big fundraising stories from media, then you get the impression that the startup people are doing really well, they are living just chill lives, they have so much money and everything. But often the reality is that the money is what we call paper money, something that is in the valuation, and you are making, dealing with choices that how can I get cash for the next gas that I need to put in my car and all those things. So that is hard. And also, you have to work really, really, really hard, especially if you have a big customer project, big milestone, there's a lot of pressure. So if you want an easy thing to do, then it's always better to work at somebody else's company. But if you want this challenge and everything, then startups might be the right place. I want to finish with another quick story. How many of you have heard about Garage 48? Quite a few, yeah. This is something that we started 7 years ago in Estonia, because we wanted to give everybody the similar experience of bringing together different people that we had when we started our company at this university course. And now we're doing really well. We've had about 100 events all around Europe and also in Middle East and Africa and elsewhere. But on the very first garage event, we also participated ourselves as participants. And we didn't have any good ideas what to make. So we made probably the stupidest, silliest thing in the history of Garage 48. We made a mobile app that was called Smasher. And the whole idea of that mobile app was that you would start it, and then you would need to take your smartphone and you would need to smash it to ground. And if you did it really heavily, strongly, then you could be level 10, which was equal to Chuck Norris. And if you like really did it like this, then you got level 1, which would be Justin Bieber. And nobody wanted to be Justin Bieber. So what we did there is that if you got Justin Bieber, then you could use Fortumo's in-app payments to pay a small amount of money. And you could buy yourself to be Chuck Norris, and then you could share it in social media. So it was a super silly idea. I think we broke a few phones during making it. But the next day we were in Estonian media and everywhere else, and they were like thinking how stupid this can be. So we left it to that. But about 2 months later, I was pitching Fortumo to the management board member of one of probably the hottest game at that time, which was Angry Birds. 2010, it was really the first, I mean, obviously many have played it, right? And back then it was the hottest game ever. And we pitched our payments, and the conversation didn't go really well. I mean, the guy wasn't obviously very interested. But at some point he said that, okay, show us what you have. And the only app we had with our payment integrated back then was this stupid Smasher app. So we took it out and we sent it to him, showed it to him. He was like, okay. But when he got to this payment part, he was like, wow, this is cool, this is awesome, this really works, guys, this is amazing. Come to Finland and let's make a deal. And we went there, and that's how we got our very first big gaming customer. And that led us to almost every big gaming company working for us, that eventually led us to Google and others working with us. So the lesson we learned from this is that if you don't know what to build, then build something silly. You can have a lot of fun, but in the best case scenario, this can also lead to something important and meaningful. And the last lesson is that don't listen to my advice. Because the idea of a startup, the pure essence of a startup is to try to do something differently, to do something original, something unique, something that hasn't been done. Like it or not, the best startup probably from last year was Donald Trump, because what he did was he completely ignored all the rules of conventional politics. Everybody was skeptical. They said it wouldn't work, it will never work, it will crash and burn. But he didn't, and that's where he ended up. So startups also don't need to copy other startups or other successful companies, but we have to find our own way, be original, do our own thing, and do it in a different way. Thank you.
Ryan, thank you for your talk. You mentioned that you have a great team, so please tell me, how do you maintain the excitement and the motivation when it's not happening, like in the startups, like you're doing a lot of mistakes? How do you keep the motivation?
Mm-hmm. I think the motivation needs to change also in the future. I think like the first 5 years our motivation was that it was so fun, it was the best thing ever, like working on those new technology products, mobiles, everything. But at some point, we felt that it didn't motivate us anymore. Then the next motivation I think we found was that, okay, we are offering payment services to people in those emerging markets that have no other way to participate in the global economy other than using this kind of payment. So we were really empowered by the fact that this helps many people around the world to be part of the digital ecosystem and digital economy and live with their lives. So that became the next motivation that carried us for quite long. So it needs to change and evolve.
It makes sense right now. Thank you so much. Any questions for Ryan? Yeah, we do have one. Just 1 second, I'll give it to you, the microphone.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Gatien, I'm a graphic designer from Luxembourg. Simple question, by any chance the name of your startup is Fortumo?
Mm-hmm.
It is? Okay, thank you.
It is, yes.